Sawadee-ka. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying Volume 6, which is titled The Natural Law of Kamma. We're going to be studying chapters 21 through 30 today, and the way that we do this program is I invite students in Zoom to be able to volunteer to read a chapter from our book. Then I'll share some teachings on that. Then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to that particular chapter. If you'd like to volunteer to read in Zoom, all you need to do is electronically raise your hand, and then I'll be able to call on you, and you're welcome to read by just unmuting your microphone. If anybody would like to ask questions, whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, all you need to do is put that into the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So is there anyone who would like to read this first chapter, 21? Okay, it looks like Pat's volunteering. Go ahead, sir.
All that occurs without a cause or condition. Then, monks, I approach those ascetics and Brahmins who hold such a doctrine in view as this. Whatever this person experiences, whether pleasure, pain, or neither pain nor pleasure, all that occurs without a cause or condition. And I said to them, is it true that you, the venerable ones, hold such a doctrine in view? When I ask them this, they affirm it. Then I say to them, in such a case, it is without a cause or condition that you might destroy life, take what is not given, indulge in sexual activity, speak falsehood, produce argumentative speech, speak harshly, indulge in idle chatter, that you might be full of longing, have a mind of ill will, and hold a wrong view. Those who fall back on absence of cause and condition as the essential truth have no interest to do what should be done and to avoid doing what should not be done, nor do they make an effort in this respect. Since they do not apprehend as true and valid anything that should be done or should not be done, they are muddle-minded. They do not guard the mind, and even the personal designation, ascetic, could not be legitimately applied to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So this chapter is essentially talking about how the Buddha was around people who had the thought that what they experience in terms of discontentedness, these pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, that there is no cause and condition that creates those, that they basically are happening randomly. And the Buddha said, okay, well, if that's what you guys think, is it such a case that there's no cause and condition that leads to any of these things, like destroying life, taking what is not given, indulging in sexual activity, speaking falsehood, producing argumentative speech, speaking harshly, indulging in idle chatter? These are all decisions that people are making to choose to do that. There is a cause and condition behind all of those things. It's craving, desire, attachment that leads to the production of those particular conducts, whether it's killing or stealing or sexual activity or lying or being argumentative, harsh, or indulging in idle chatter. There's craving, desire, attachment that's at the root of that. And that's also the same thing that's at the root of these conditioned feelings of pleasure, pain, and neither pain nor pleasure. And then he says, okay, is it also because there's no cause and condition that's leading to the longing, which is the craving, desire, attachment, that leads to the ill will, which is the anger, hatred, ill will, all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, and having wrong view, which would be the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. And of course, there's a cause and condition there. Those are the causes and conditions that are producing all this unwise decision-making that leads to unwholesome kamma. So if there was somebody who didn't understand the cause and effect relationship that exists because of the natural law of kamma, then what the Buddha is saying is that this person isn't even really on the path to enlightenment, that they don't have an interest to do what should be done or to avoid doing what should not be done. And they don't make an effort in this respect. They're not applying their effort and energy towards improving their decision-making because they don't realize that what they're experiencing is a result of their decisions, because they don't think there's any cause and condition that's part of it. And then he eventually says that because of this, these individuals are muddle-minded. What he's saying is that they lack concentration, because when your mind has the pollutions of craving, anger, and ignorance, then the mind's going to be muddled. It's not going to be focused and concentrated, having clarity and deep memory. And then he says that these individuals don't guard themselves. This is the mindfulness that you use to guard the mind. That if you're using that mindfulness or awareness of mind, you can guard the mind so that when you see discontentedness arising, you can cut it off and let it go, allowing the mind to be transformed to the point where you're no longer experiencing any discontent feelings. And he says because of this, the personal designation aesthetic could not be legitimately applied to them. If you are an ascetic, that means you're somebody who's given up worldly life in this pursuit of getting to enlightenment. You don't have to do that in order to get to enlightenment. You can live a household life, but if you are an ascetic, that means you're on the path to enlightenment and making your way towards enlightenment. And he's saying since these people don't even understand that there is a cause and condition, they don't even understand that there is a natural law of Kamma, then you can't even say that they're actually even on the path to enlightenment at that point. So let me know what questions you guys have here in this particular chapter. This is chapter 21 of volume 6. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next one. There's someone who would like to volunteer to read this one. Okay, Yihang, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Teacher David. First kind of doctrine that there is no Kamma. Monks, a hair blanket is declared to be the worst kind of woven garment. A hair blanket is cold in cold weather, hot in hot weather, ugly, foul-smelling, and uncomfortable. So too, the doctrine of Makali is cleared the worst among the doctrines of the various aesthetics. The unwise man Makali teaches the doctrine and view there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy, that is not only is there no result from Kamma, but also no Kamma itself. All these are null. Monks, the fortunate ones, Arahants, the perfectly enlightened ones of the past taught a doctrine of Kamma, a doctrine of these, a doctrine of energy. Yet the unwise man Makali contradicts them with his claim, there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy. The fortunate ones, Arahants, the perfectly enlightened ones of the future, will also teach a doctrine of Kamma, a doctrine of these, a doctrine of energy. Yet the unwise man Makali contradicts them with his claim, there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy. At present, I am the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, and I teach a doctrine of Kamma, a doctrine of these, a doctrine of energy. Yet the unwise man Makali contradicts me with his claim, there is no Kamma, no deed, no energy. Just as a trap set at the mouth of a river would bring about harm, pain, calamity, and disaster to many fish, so too the unwise man Makali is, as it were, a trap for people who has arisen in the world for the harm, pain, calamity, and disaster of many beings. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So here the Buddha is talking about the worst collection of teachings that there could be would be a collection of teachings that doesn't teach the natural law of Kamma, because this is going to cause significant harm. Because if somebody was learning a collection of teachings and they didn't realize that it was their own decisions that are leading to any particular result, how would they ever improve the condition of their mind or their life? And he's referring to this gentleman here who wasn't teaching that and saying that this is unwise that he's teaching that. But then he goes into detail about the future Buddhas, the past Buddhas, and then him himself, that all of them taught this natural law of Kamma, or they will teach this natural law of Kamma. And this individual is contradicting that. And this is going to cause harm to any students who learn that, oh, it's just by random chance that we're experiencing what we're experiencing, or that it's just from maybe God or destiny or fate or good luck or bad luck or any of these kinds of things. But when you can peer into this and you look at what you're experiencing in life, you can see that there's this cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. And the whole path to enlightenment is all about awakening to this natural law, let alone all the other natural laws. So if somebody wasn't learning the natural law of Kamma as part of their journey to enlightenment, this is going to cause significant harm. And the Buddha is describing this as a trap, like a trap set to cause disaster to many fish. This would be a trap. This would cause calamity for many beings who are learning any kind of collection of teachings that didn't include the natural law of Kamma. So let me know what questions you guys have here. This is chapter 22 in volume 6, the worst of doctrine that there is no Kamma. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So let's go to the next one. This is chapter 23. So someone who would like to read this? Okay, looks like Pat's got that one. Go ahead, sir. And then, Yihang, we can come to you for the next one.
Result of Kamma is threefold. And what is the result of Kamma? The result of Kamma, I say, is threefold to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. This is called the result of Kamma. This, monks, is called action's fruit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Here, a very short lesson from the Buddha, essentially saying that you can't run and hide from your Kamma, that any decisions that you make, either wise or unwise, you can see through his teachings that it leads to either wholesome Kamma or wholesome results, or unwholesome Kamma or unwholesome results. And you're going to experience that either in this life, the next life, or some future life. And as you guys know that the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief, you can independently verify this cycle of rebirth through wisdom to understand how to accomplish that. And in volume 11, chapter 105, that's where I teach how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. So this whole path to enlightenment is to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma, because prior to getting on the path, and even while someone is first on the path, you're still producing unwholesome Kamma through making unwise decisions based in craving, anger, and this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. It's kind of like shoving mud into the garden hose. But when you're getting on this path, it's like taking your garden hose and hooking it up to a faucet and opening up the faucet and putting clean water through this garden hose. And you're flushing out all the unwholesome Kamma so that you can get to a point where you've extinguished all of that. So now as you're learning and growing and developing on this path, as any unwholesome Kamma is coming back to you, you'd like to make wise decisions in the present moment based on the natural law of Kamma to extinguish any unwholesome Kamma that's coming back to you. And then more and more with those wise decisions, you're only going to be experiencing wholesome results in your day-to-day life. So here the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that you can't run and hide from the decisions you make. And as long as you're making unwise decisions, it's still producing unwholesome Kamma. And you're going to have to deal with that. You're going to have to experience that before you get to enlightenment. But if you're extinguishing your unwholesome Kamma, you can eventually get to a point where everything you do, you're experiencing wholesome Kamma. There's nothing unwholesome that's occurring in your day-to-day life because you're only making wise decisions. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, there's no questions here. Let's go to the next one, chapter 24. Yihang, would you like to read this one?
Yeah, sure. Being spawned by action, one is not a Brahmin by birth, nor by birth a non-Brahmin. By action is one a Brahmin. By action is one a non-Brahmin. For men are farmers by their acts, and by their acts are craftsmen too. And men are merchants by their acts, and by their acts are servants too. And men are robbers by their acts, and by their acts are soldiers too. And men are chaplains by their acts, and by their acts are rulers too. So that is how truly wise see action as it really is, see dependent origination, skilled in action and its results. Action makes the world go around. Action makes the generation turn. Living beings are bound by action, like the chariot wheel by the linchpin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, these Brahmin were Hindu priests, and you were born into this family, and it was about 15% of society that was thought that these are holy people, they're pure people, and now they would do rites and rituals and ceremonies for other people, and their life was supposed to get better through indulging in these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that the common person would be paying the Brahmin for. And people thought that based on where you were born, that was what determined whether you're holy or not. And people who were born into impoverished families were looked at as a low class. But the Buddha understood that that's not true, and he didn't think of it that way. And here what he's teaching is, he's saying, essentially, one is not a holy person based on birth, nor by birth a non-holy person, right? And then by action is one a holy person. By action is one a non-holy person. So it's our actions that determine whether we're doing wholesome things or unwholesome things. And then he goes into other details here to help you be able to see this more clearly, that a farmer is a farmer based on their actions, and a craftsman and a merchant and servants and all these other things, it's based on their actions. And then he's saying the truly wise, meaning the people who understand these natural laws of existence, see action as it really is, that we understand that it's our actions that determine what we experience on a day-to-day basis. And then understanding dependent origination, which is that highest truth of the teachings of the Buddha from volume 5, chapter 14. This is showing you the 12 interlinking steps that brings a being into the world. And that's what you're experiencing as you are being reborn throughout different births, being reborn over and over and over again, and experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again. So being skilled in action and its results is that you've learned the natural law of Kamma. You see dependent origination. You see this cause and effect relationship between all these things. And the Buddha is saying that it's action that essentially determines what you experience in your day-to-day life. And then he's saying living beings are bound by our action, meaning that we're going to experience the things based on our decisions, whether it's bodily actions, verbal actions, or mental actions. We're going to experience the results of whatever we choose. Just like a chariot, which is like a cart being pulled by a horse, there's a linchpin in the middle that's connecting the horses in the chariot. This linchpin is the thing that's keeping those together. If that linchpin was removed, the horse in the carriage wouldn't be able to be together. So it's the actions of a living being that's basically holding things together. And as you make certain decisions about your actions in your day-to-day life, that's what you're going to be experiencing. That's the linchpin. That's the thing that's ensuring that you're either experiencing wholesome results or unwholesome results based on your wise or unwise decisions. So by understanding that your actions is what determines what you experience on a day-to-day basis, now you can just cultivate more and more wisdom about the natural law of Kamma, and now you can unravel this life of continuously being reborn over and over again. You can unravel the discontentedness that is experienced in the mind, getting to the point where the mind's completely peaceful and joyful. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this one. The Buddha's bringing your attention to how actions are so important and what you choose to do through your decision making. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next chapter, 25. Would someone like to read this one? Okay, go ahead, Pat.
To be reborn, graceful, rich, and influential. Malika, some women are not prone to anger or often intensely frustrated. Even if she is criticized a lot, she does not lose her temper and become irritated, hostile, and stubborn. She does not display anger, hatred, and bitterness, and she gives things to ascetics or Brahmins, food and drink, clothing and vehicles, garlands, scents, and ointments, bedding, dwellings, and lighting. When she passes away from that state, if she comes back to this world, wherever she is reborn, she is beautiful, attractive, and graceful, possessing supreme beauty of complexion, rich with great wealth and property, and influential. Thank you.
Okay, so the Buddha here is exposing you to an aspect of the natural law of Kamma to be able to help you understand the cause and effect relationship of certain decisions that an individual makes and what that means for their rebirth. The Buddha isn't suggesting that you should aspire to be reborn and to be reborn, rich and beautiful and attractive and all these kinds of things, but he's just helping you to understand what it is that leads to any particular thing. Because sometimes we can be in life and feel so miserable about where we were born or what our family condition is like, or maybe our physical appearance. And maybe we look at other people who are more well off and maybe someone's jealous or vindictive or resentful about that. But here you can see what the Buddha is saying about an individual who's being reborn, that if they're not prone to anger or intensely frustrated, and when someone is criticized, they don't lose their temper, becoming irritated and hostile and stubborn, and they don't display anger, hatred, and bitterness, then these are the things that lead to rebirth, having beauty, being attractive and graceful, possessing this supreme beauty and complexion. And then this individual also gave food, drinks, clothing, vehicles, garlands, essentially all kinds of offerings to individuals who are on the path to enlightenment and helping the world to learn the teachings. And because of this, now when they're reborn, they're going to be experiencing this wealth of property and being influential. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see this cause and effect relationship so you can understand the things that lead to improved rebirths. The same things that lead to improved rebirths are the same things that lead to enlightenment. So whenever you see the Buddha teaching something like this, you're disinterested in rebirth. So you can use these same things that he's teaching to practice now in this life to lead to your enlightenment. So here he's not guiding you to be able to be reborn or saying that that's what you should aspire for, but that helps you to understand people in the world today. Why are they born beautiful, attractive, graceful, and having beautiful complexion or rich or having lots of great wealth and property or influential? You can see that it's because of things that occurred in their past lives, but also it's things that are occurring in their current life as well, certain decisions that they're making. Because if you were angry and frustrated and bitter and hostile and irritated and stubborn, you're going to have a certain appearance on your face that isn't going to be very beautiful and isn't going to be very attractive. So you can see that in terms of the way that the mind is the boss and the body is the employee. The body is going to follow along with whatever's going on in the mind. So if the mind is peaceful and joyful, and the mind isn't having this hostility and aggression and bitterness and irritation and stubbornness, there's going to be a brighter appearance on the face. Whereas if the mind is bitter and hostile and harsh, there's going to be a certain appearance on the face because of that too. So you can practice these things that the Buddha is teaching you here, which is to eliminate anger and frustration, that if people criticize you, ensure that you're not losing your temper, becoming irritated, hostile, or stubborn, having anger and hatred and bitterness. And he is also teaching about generosity because it trains your mind to be able to practice letting go and letting go of craving, desire, attachment. And remember, you need to practice that generosity from the middle way. And some of the best wholesome Kamma that you could create is supporting other people to be able to get access to the teachings of the Buddha. And that's why the Buddha is teaching you here to be able to support people who are on the path to enlightenment or sharing the path to enlightenment with your generous offerings. So let me know what questions you guys have here about this particular chapter. You can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So now let's go to the next chapter. This is chapter 26. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Ihan, go ahead, ma'am.
Gifts of a wholesome person. Monks, there are these 5 gifts of a wholesome person. What 5? 1. He gives a gift out of confidence. 2. He gives a gift respectfully. 3. He gives a timely gift. 4. He gives a gift unreservedly. 5. He gives a gift without injuring himself or others. 1. Because he has given a gift out of confidence, wherever the result of that gift is produced, he becomes rich with great wealth and property, and he is handsome, attractive, graceful, possessing supreme beauty of complexion. 2. Because he has given a gift respectfully, wherever the result of that gift is produced, he becomes rich with great wealth and property, and his sons and wives, slaves, servants, and workers are obedient, lend an ear and apply their minds to understand. 3. Because he has given a timely gift, wherever the result of that gift is produced, he becomes rich with great wealth and property, and timely benefits come to him in abundance. 4. Because he has given a gift unreservedly, wherever the result of that gift is produced, he becomes rich with great wealth and property, and his mind inclines to the enjoyment of the 5 kinds of 5 sensual pleasures. 5. Because he has given a gift without injuring himself or others, wherever the result of that gift is produced, he becomes rich with great wealth and property, and no damage comes to his property from any source, whether from fire, floods, kings, thieves, or displeasing hears. These are the 5 gifts of a wholesome person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yihang. So here, the Buddha is providing 5 criteria that would be wise for you to practice as you're practicing giving gifts. One is this confidence, giving respectfully, giving a timely gift, unreservedly, and without injuring yourself or others. And while the Buddha is explaining how giving in this way does lead to these results, that's not why you would be interested in giving a gift, right? If you're giving a gift with the expectation of getting something in return, you're not going to have the same experience of being able to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. It's not actually pure generosity at that point. But the Buddha is helping you to be able to see this cause and effect relationship so that when these things are occurring, you will understand why. But he's not suggesting that you should aspire to be rich or wealthy or have all this property. You can be enlightened and have wealth. There's no harm with that. But he's not suggesting that you should crave or desire these things. He's just helping you to be able to see that as you're giving gifts and you see these results coming back to you, now you'll understand the reason why. And these are 5 things that he talks about that are leading to these particular results. So giving this gift out of confidence means you're confident in the gift that you're giving, that you don't feel like you've given too little or you've given too much, but you have this confidence, and you have confidence in the person that you're giving the gift to. Giving respectfully is being polite and respectful about what it is that you're giving, putting some thought into the things that you're giving. Giving a timely gift is like giving a gift that is going to be usable and helpful to that particular person. Like say you have a friend or family member that's going on a camping trip, and maybe you give them a gift of a flashlight because you know in the next 3 days they're going on this trip, right? Or something like this. So giving a timely gift is something that somebody can use in a timely manner, and it's immediately available to them to be able to use in any particular situation. Giving unreservedly means that you're not having this craving, desire, attachment where you're holding on and just kind of giving meager gifts to people. Giving a gift without injuring yourself or others is ensuring you're not doing things like stealing from other people and then giving a gift away, or that you're depleting your own resources to the point where you don't have the basic necessities that you need. So when you're giving gifts, you need to be sure you're not injuring yourself, meaning that you're still whole and that you have the things that you need to be able to take care of yourself, and that you're not causing harm to others by stealing from people. Or maybe if you were in a life partnership, maybe if you're giving up so much of your offerings and your wealth, maybe your life partner isn't able to get the things that they need in order to sustain their life. So you're not interested in causing harm to yourself or others through practice of generosity. You'd like to put some thought into any kind of gifts that you're giving to anyone. So let me know what questions you guys have here. This is part of the natural law of Kamma, is understanding giving and practicing generosity and how to ensure that you're making wise decisions and experiencing wholesome results related to the natural law of Kamma. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. So we'll go to the next one, which is chapter 27. Is there someone here? Okay, looks like Pat's going to read that one too. So we got the Yihang and Pat show today.
Yeah, not many people in class today.
Yeah.
Deeds with fruit that result in great accomplishment and power. Having cultivated for 7 years of loving kindness, for 7 eons of contraction and expansion, I did not return to this world. Whenever the eon contracted, I reached the plane of streaming radiance. And when the eon expanded, I arose in an empty heavenly mansion. And there I was, Brahma, God, the great Brahma, the unvanquished victor, the all-knowing, the all-powerful. 36 times I was Saka, ruler of the heavenly beings, and many hundreds of times I was a wheel-turning monarch, righteous, a king of righteousness, conqueror of the 4 regions of the earth, maintaining stability in the land and possession of the 7 treasures. What need is there to speak of mere local kingship? It occurred to me, monks, to wonder of what kind of deed of mine is this the fruit? Of what deeds ripening am I now of such great accomplishment and power? And then it occurred to me, it is the fruit of 3 kinds of deeds of mine, the ripening of 3 kinds of deeds that I am now of such great accomplishment and power, deeds of giving, of mastery of the mind, and of refraining. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So here the Buddha is talking about the natural law of Kamma, of what it was that led to him being able to get to enlightenment by himself as an actual Buddha in this last life. Because he's talking about these previous lives that he lived and what he experienced. Because ultimately he gave up being the king in that particular life because he was the prince destined to become a king, that he stepped down and away from that to go on this journey to get to enlightenment. So because he had experienced all these different rebirths that he's talking about here, he's saying, what is the real need to even think about being a king in this life, a local king, when I've already done all these other things in previous lives and I experienced these things that were even much better than that? And then ultimately he gets to the point where he says, well, what is it that led to me being able to become a Buddha in this life? And he gives these 3 things. And of course, there's more that he needed to learn and grow and develop in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But these are the 3 top things that he says help to lead to him getting to enlightenment. And these are the 3 things that are going to lead to your enlightenment as well, not just for him, because his mind works in the same way as yours. The first one, he says, is the deeds of giving. That's the practice of generosity. He knows that in his previous lives and in his current life, he practiced extensive amounts of generosity. That's training the mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So you're going to need to practice a certain amount of generosity so that you can eliminate selfishness. So if you're noticing your mind's holding on to any particular aspect of material possessions or your time or things like this, you would like to be able to practice generosity so that you can train your mind to let go. So if you're noticing like you wash your clothes and a sweater comes out and it's ripped and torn and you're frustrated and agitated about that, it's that you're attached to your clothes and you would like to start practicing some generosity related to your clothing, where you let other people use it or borrow it or you give it away or things like this. Or if you notice you're attached to your jewelry or your money or your house or something like this, you can start sharing these things, where you either share it or give it away or let people come stay in your home and things like this. And this is going to train your mind to not hold on to these things so tightly, that you can train your mind to let go so that then you don't have discontentedness related to these things. Mastery of mind is to train the mind and have it disciplined. That's what you're doing through the Eightfold Path. And then refraining is to be able to restrain the mind and pull it back, almost like riding a horse and having reins, that where you see with your mindfulness that your mind's longing and yearning for something, you would like to pull that back and refrain from things like killing and stealing and sexual misconduct and lying and taking substances that cause heedlessness. If you allow your mind to continue to act upon these cravings that are arising in your mind, it's just going to keep producing unwholesome results. So you need to be able to restrain the mind and pull back. And that's what he's saying. These are the 3 things that led to his enlightenment: is the generosity, the mastery of mind, which that includes a lot of things, including meditation and all the other aspects of the path, and then the restraining part and actually pulling the mind back, no longer allowing it to just run around like a wild animal, essentially. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Okay, it looks like Alberto or Martha has a question.
Yes. Hi, David and all. I'm sorry, I have a question regarding the previous chapter, but I didn't raise my hand on time.
Sure.
Okay. So if I am understanding this chapter well, it's about generosity. And so I have a question about the first gift, first characteristic of a wholesome person, the number one. So my question, let's see if I can explain myself well, is like, lately, I think I've been trying to develop more discernment to choose to whom I should, I feel like being generous or help. So my question is that, is it okay to not just like practice generosity for the sake of practicing generosity if you feel that the person in particular is not ready to really benefit from that generosity or will not see that as generous? My question is that if you can have more discernment about how to practice generosity without being selfish. So it's like trying to find that balance. Like, because in the past I was more like, my natural tendency is to help in many different ways. Now I'm more like, is this person ready to benefit for this or not? Is this worth my effort or not? And then I'm being more selective, trying to have more judgment. Is that okay? Or is that I'm becoming more selfish?
Yeah, what you're talking about is discernment, not judgment. Judgment is when you're putting yourself above people or below people.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is...
That's what I meant.
What you're talking about is discernment, is wise decision-making. And the Buddha teaches everything should be based in discernment, including your generosity. And he gives certain criteria if you were to make offerings to like ascetics or teachers or ordained practitioners. He gives criteria for that. And it's the same thing in your personal life. If you're practicing generosity with the people around you, you would like to use discernment, because whatever gifts you give, whatever generosity, whether it's your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, you would like to make sure it's beneficial. And the only way you can do that is through discernment.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I was using the word judgment like we use it in Spanish, which is juicio. And this is how we translate discernment. I need to remember that when I speak in English. Because the word discernment in Spanish is juicio, that resembles judgment. Okay.
I see.
So I need to keep that in mind.
Yeah. People get confused about that in English too. They think that just making a decision across the street is a judgment, but that's not judgment. That's a wise decision to look both ways and then choose to walk across the street. When you're judging someone, you're trying to determine what is wholesome or unwholesome for other people, putting yourself above or below them, measuring and comparing yourself to other people.
I have a question also. Many times I see people begging on this on the stop signs, on the traffic lights, and I wondered, this person is here because he made really bad decisions in life, but before I used to give them something. Now I'm thinking, and I said, should I give them, or should I better give my money to maybe a institution that helps homeless people? What do you think about this?
Yeah, since you live in America, there's been a lot of, investigative reports showing that a lot of the people that are standing on those street corners, they're dressing in dirty clothes and collecting money on the street, and then afterwards they go get in their Mercedes or their BMW and go about their life, right? That they're not actually truly in need. They're just kind of there to get this, free money, essentially. So when you're giving out money like that to somebody that you don't know, you're not able to have the confidence that this is actually going to something beneficial. I would suggest that if you're interested in helping people that are in need of resources to sustain their life, that you purchase those resources and give them to the individual people rather than just giving money, or do what you're saying, which is support an organization that is going to then provide those resources to the people in need of them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oops. Okay, so we'll go back down here to this one. This is chapter 27. Let's see if we have any questions anywhere else. Thank you guys for your questions. All right. I don't see anything else, so we'll go to chapter 28. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Okay, Yihan.
Why human beings are seen to be unwholesome and wholesome. Then the Brahmin student Subha, Todea's son, went to the perfectly enlightened one and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and friendly talk was finished, he sat down at one side and asked the perfectly enlightened one, Master Gotama, what is the cause and condition why human beings are seen to be unwholesome and wholesome? For people are seen to be short-lived and long-lived, sickly and healthy, ugly and beautiful, uninfluential and influential, poor and wealthy, low-born and high-born, unwise and wise. What is the cause and condition, Master Gotama? Why human beings are seen to be unwholesome and wholesome? Student, beings are owners of their actions, heirs of their actions. They originate from their actions, are bound to their actions, have their actions as their refugee. It is action that distinguishes beings as unwholesome and wholesome. I do not understand in detail the meaning of Master Gotama's statement, which he spoke in brief without expounding the meaning in detail. It would be good if Master Gotama would teach me the teachings so that I might understand in detail the meaning of Master Gotama's statement. Then, student, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, sir, the Brahmin student Subha replied. The perfectly enlightened one said these. Here, student, some man or woman kills living beings and is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. Because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. But if on the dissolution of the body after death, he does not reappear in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, in hell, but comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is short-lived. This is the way, student, that leads to short life, namely one kills living being and is murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. But here, student, some man or woman, abandoning the killing of living beings, abstains from killing living beings, with rod and weapon laid aside, gentle and kindly, he resides compassionate to all living beings. Because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a happy destination, even in the heavenly world. But if on the dissolution of the body after death, he does not reappear in a happy destination in the heavenly world, but instead comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is long-lived. This is the way, student, that leads to long life, namely abandoning the killing of living beings. One abstains from killing living beings, with rod and weapon laid aside, gentle and kindly. One resides compassionate to all living beings. Here, student, some man or woman is given to injuring beings with the hand, with a clod, with a stick, or with a knife. Because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is sickly. This is the way, student, that leads to sickliness. Namely, one is given to injuring beings with the hand, with a clod, with a stick, or with a knife. But here, student, some man or woman is not given to injuring beings with the hand, with a clod, with a stick, or with a knife, because of performing and undertaking such an action. On the dissolution of the body, after death, he reappears in a happy destination, in the heavenly world. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is healthy. This is the way, student, that leads to health. Namely, one is not given to injuring beings with the hand, with a clod, with a stick, or with a knife. Here, student, some man or woman is of an angry and irritable character. Even when criticized a little, he is offended, becomes angry, hostile, and resentful, and displays anger, hate, and bitterness. Because of performing and undertaking such action, on the dissolution of the body, after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is ugly. This is the way, student, that leads to ugliness. Namely, one is of an angry and irritable character. Even when criticized a little, he is offended, becomes angry, hostile, and resentful, and displays anger, hate, and bitterness. But here, student, some man or woman is not of an anger and irritable character. Even when criticized a little, he is not offended, does not become angry, hostile, and resentful, and does not display anger, hate, and bitterness. Because of performing and undertaking such action, on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a happy destination, in the heavenly world. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is beautiful. This is the way, student, that leads to being beautiful. Namely, one is not of an angry and irritable character. Even when criticized a little, he is not offended, does not become angry, hostile, and resentful, and does not display anger, hate, and bitterness. Here, student, some man or woman is jealous, one who is selfish, resentful, and feels bitter about the gains, honor, respect, appreciation, salutations, and veneration received by others. Because of performing and undertaking such action, on the dissolution of the body, after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is uninfluential. This is the way, student, that leads to being uninfluential. Namely, one is jealous, resentful, and feels bitter towards the gains, honor, respect, appreciation, salutations, and veneration received by others. But here, student, some man or woman is not jealous, one who is not selfish, resentful, and feels bitter about the gains, honor, respect, appreciation, salutations, and veneration received by others. Because of performing and undertaking such action, on the dissolution of the body, after death, he reappears in a happy destination, in the heavenly world. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is influential. This is the way, student, that leads to being influential. Namely, one is not jealous, resentful, and feels bitter towards the gains, honor, respect, appreciation, salutation, and veneration received by others. Here, student, Some man or woman does not give food, drink, clothing, carriages, garlands, scents, ointments, beds, dwelling, and lamps to ascetics or Brahmins. Because of performing and undertaking such action, on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in perdition, even in hell. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he's reborn, he's poor. This is the way, student, that leads to poverty, namely one does not give food, drink, clothing, carriages, garlands, scents, ointments, beds, dwelling, and lamps to ascetics or Brahmins. But here, student, some man or woman gives food, drink, clothing, carriages, garlands, scents, ointments, beds, dwelling, and lamps to ascetics or Brahmins. Because of performing and undertaking such action, on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a happy destination in the heavenly world. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he's reborn, he's healthy, he's wealthy. This is the way, student, that leads to wealth, namely one gives food, drinks, clothing, carriages, garlands, scents, ointments, beds, dwelling, and lamps to ascetics or Brahmins. Here, student, some man or woman is stubborn and arrogant. He does not pay homage, respect to one who should receive homage, respect, does not rise up for one in whose presence he should rise up, does not offer a seat to one who deserves a seat, does not make way for one for whom he should make way, and does not honor, respect, appreciate, and venerate one who should be honored, respected, appreciated, and venerated. Because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in perdition, even in hell. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is low-born. This is the way, student, that leads to low birth, namely one is stubborn and arrogant. He does not pay homage, respect to one who should receive homage, respect, does not rise up for one in whose presence he should rise up, does not offer a seat to one who deserves a seat, does not make way for one for whom he should make way, and does not honor, respect, appreciate, and venerate one who should be honored, respected, appreciated, and venerated. But here, student, some man or woman is not stubborn and arrogant. He pays homage, respect to one who should receive homage, respect, raises up for one in whose presence he should rise up, offers a seat to one who deserves a seat, makes way for one for whom he should make way, and honors, respects, appreciates, and venerates one who should be honored, respected, appreciated, and venerated. Because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a happy destination in the heavenly world. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is highborn. This is the way, student, that leads to a high birth, namely one is not stubborn and arrogant. He pays homage, respect to one who should receive homage, respect, rises up for one in whose presence he should rise up, offers a seat to one who deserves a seat, makes way for one for whom he should make way, and honors, respects, and appreciates and venerates one who should be honored, respected, appreciated, and venerated. Here, student, some man or woman does not visit an ascetic or a Brahmin and ask, "Venerable sir, what is wholesome? What is unwholesome? What is blamable? What is blameless?" What should be cultivated? What should not be cultivated? What kind of action will lead to my harm and discontentedness for a long time? What kind of action will lead to my welfare and peacefulness for a long time? Because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a state without basic necessities, in perdition, even in hell. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is unwise. This is the way, student, that leads to being unwise. Namely, one does not visit an ascetic or Brahmin and ask such questions. But here, student, some man or woman visits an ascetic or a Brahmin and asks, Venerable Sir, what is wholesome? What is unwholesome? What is blamable? What is blameless? What should be cultivated? What should not be cultivated? What kind of action will lead to my harm and discontentedness for a long time? What kind of action will lead to my welfare and peacefulness for a long time? Because of performing and undertaking such action on the dissolution of the body after death, he reappears in a happy destination, in the heavenly world. But if instead he comes back to the human state, then wherever he is reborn, he is wise. This is the way, student, that leads to wisdom. Namely, one visits an ascetic or Brahmin and asks such questions. Thus, student, the way that leads to short life makes people short-lived. The way that leads to long life makes people long-lived. The way that leads to sickliness makes people sickly. The way that leads to health makes people healthy. The way that leads to ugliness makes people ugly. The way that leads to being beautiful makes people beautiful. The way that leads to being uninfluential makes people uninfluential. The way that leads to being influential makes people influential. The way that leads to poverty makes people poor. The way that leads to wealth makes people wealthy. The way that leads to low birth makes people low-born. The way that leads to high birth makes people high-born. The way that leads to unwise makes people unwise. The way that leads to wisdom makes people wise. Beings are owners of their actions. Student, heirs of their actions. They originate from their actions, are bound to their actions, have their actions as their refugee. It is action that distinguishes beings as unwholesome and wholesome. When this was said, the Brahmin student Suba, Todeya's son, said to the perfectly enlightened one, Magnificent Master Gotama, magnificent Master Gotama. Master Gotama has made the teachings clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overturned, revealing that was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, and to the teachings and to the community of monks. Let Master Gotama remember me as a household practitioner who has gone to him for refuge for life. Thank you.
Magnificent, Yihang, magnificent. that was a very long chapter. I was going to offer help along the way, but I figured if you needed help, you would let me know. This is a very long chapter where the Buddha is going into a lot of detail to explain the natural law of Kamma, of what leads to any particular result that an individual would be experiencing. So the way that you can use a chapter like this, because again, you're not interested in rebirth, the Buddha's talking about what leads to certain rebirth, is that you can go through a chapter like this and see the certain qualities that he's talking about that will be wise for you to practice, or the certain qualities that would be wise for you to eliminate. So for example, here, this first one, he's talking about killing, right? And eliminating that. And you would like to abandon that. This next one, he's talking about injuring beings. This next one, he's talking about an individual with an angry or irritable character, right? You would like to eliminate that. Here, what is he talking about? Jealousy and selfishness, being resentful. You can eliminate those kinds of things. So you can go all the way through this particular chapter and you can see the things that would be wise to eliminate and the things to cultivate. And that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment, being able to do that. Because the same things that lead to rebirth and an improved destination is going to lead to your enlightenment as well. Ultimately, by the time the Buddha describes this entire discourse and helps this student, the student basically says, okay, I'm going to be a student of yours now. I'm going to study with you and come to you for protection. Essentially, the protection, this refuge that an individual might talk about, is learning the teachings. Because when you learn and practice the teachings, your mind becomes protected from discontentedness. It's not physical protection because nobody can protect you physically. It's your own decisions that are going to lead to any particular wholesome result. So if we went out into the world and we're bitter and harsh and hostile, people are going to try to attack us and injure this physical body. But if we go out into the world and we're loving and kind and warm and gentle with all the people around us, then we're not going to have that difficulty. So whenever you see someone talking about going to the Buddha for refuge, they're talking about learning and practicing the teachings so that they can protect their mind from the discontentedness. And then by making wise decisions, it will then provide this protection that they're not experiencing unwholesome results in their day-to-day life. So let me know what questions you guys have on this rather than go through each individual part. I think it's very clear. Yihang did a great job of reading it very clearly. You can use this chapter to go through and look at the qualities to cultivate and the qualities to eliminate. And that's what's going to lead to improved condition of your mind in your life. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. So let's go to the next chapter. This next chapter is chapter 29. I'm not going to have us read this one, but I'll describe it, and then Pat, you can read the next one. What this one is this is the Buddha describing his qualities of his physical body, because somebody asked him questions about why he was born as a Buddha and why he looked the way that he looked. And now he explains the Kamma behind why he looked the way that he did. So this is describing what the Buddha actually looked like. And you can see through this that a lot of times the statues that we see of him isn't the way that he actually looked in his day-to-day life. But this artwork that I use, this is depicted based on this particular discourse that it describes what the Buddha looked like. So if you were interested in reading this chapter, you could. And once again, the way that you read a chapter like this is, yes, the Buddha is describing certain qualities that he cultivated in his previous lives that led to him looking like this in his last life. But what you would like to do is look at those qualities and then cultivate those qualities. So here, he's talking about how he was practicing generosity and self-discipline and things like that, how he conducted himself in wholesome body, speech, and mind. So you can go through this discourse and you can see the things that he's talking about and how you would like to cultivate those same things, how he's eliminated craving, anger, and ignorance, and so forth and so on. This is essentially just talking about all the different qualities that led to him looking a certain way. And that's not what's going to lead to your enlightenment, knowing why the Buddha looked a certain way, but the qualities that he practiced, that's what it is that you would like to be able to learn. So here he's talking about agitation and aggressiveness and things like that, eliminating resentment. That's how you can glean benefit out of a chapter like this. So you can read this and then you can gain that insight. So I'm going to go on to the last chapter for today, which is chapter 30. So Pat, if you would like to read this one, you're more than welcome to.
The simile of a lump of salt. Monks, if one were to say thus, a person experiences Kamma in precisely the same way that he created it. In such a case, there could be no living of the spiritual life and no opportunity would be seen for completely making an end of discontentedness. But if one were to say thus, when a person creates Kamma that is to be experienced in a particular way, he experiences its result precisely in that way. In such a case, the living of the spiritual life is possible and an opportunity is seen for completely making an end to discontentedness. Here, monks, some person has created a small amount of unwholesome Kamma, yet it leads him to hell, while some other person here has created exactly the same small amount of Kamma, yet it is to be experienced in this very life without even a slight residue being seen, much less plentiful residue. What kind of person creates a small amount of unwholesome kamma that leads him to hell? Here, some person is undeveloped in body, virtuous behavior, mind, and wisdom. He is limited and has a mean character, and he dwells in discontentedness. When such a person creates a small amount of unwholesome kamma, it leads him to hell. What kind of person creates exactly the same small amount of unwholesome kamma, and yet it is to be experienced in this very life, without even a slight residue being seen, much less plentiful residue? Here, some person is developed in body, virtuous behavior, mind, and wisdom. He is unlimited and has a lofty character, and he resides without measure. When such a person creates exactly the same small amount of unwholesome kamma, he is to be experienced in this very life, without even a slight residue being seen, much less plentiful residue. Suppose a man would drop a lump of salt into a small bowl of water. What do you think, monks? Would that lump of salt make the small quantity of water in the bowl salty and undrinkable? Yes, venerable sir. For what reason? Because the water in the bowl is limited. Thus, that lump of salt would make it salty and undrinkable. But suppose a man would drop a lump of salt into the river Ganges. What do you think, monks? Would that lump of salt make the river Ganges become salty and undrinkable? No, venerable sir. For what reason? Because the river Ganges contains a large volume of water. Thus, that lump of salt would not make it salty and undrinkable. So too, monks, some person here has created a small amount of unwholesome kamma, yet it leads him to hell, while some other person here has created exactly the same small amount of kamma, yet it is to be experienced in this very life, without even a slight residue being seen, much less abundant residue. Here, monks, someone is in prison for stealing half a kahapana coin currency, a kahapana or 100 kahapanas, while someone else is not in prison for stealing the same amount of money. What kind of person in prison for stealing half a kahapana, or 100 kahapanas? Here, someone is poor, with little property and wealth. Such a person is in prison for stealing half a kahapana, or 100 kahapanas. What kind of person is not in prison for stealing half a kahapana, or 100 kahapanas? Here, someone is rich, without much money and wealth. Such a person is not in prison for stealing half a kahapana, or 100 kahapanas. So too, monks, some person has created a small amount of unwholesome kamma, yet it leads him to hell, while some other person here has created exactly the same small amount of kamma, yet it is to be experienced in this very life without even a slight residue being seen, much less abundant residue. Monks, take the case of a sheep merchant or a butcher who can execute, imprison, fine, or otherwise penalize someone who has stolen one of his sheep but can't do so to someone else who has stolen his sheep. What kind of person can the sheep merchant or butcher execute, imprison, fine, or otherwise penalize for stealing a sheep? One who is poor, with little property and wealth. The sheep merchant or butcher can execute, imprison, fine, or otherwise penalize such a person for stealing a sheep. What kind of person can't a sheep merchant or butcher execute, imprison, fine, or otherwise penalize for stealing a sheep? One who is rich, with a lot of money and wealth, a king or royal minister. The sheep merchant or butcher can't execute, imprison, fine, or otherwise penalize such a person for stealing a sheep. He can only plead with him, "Sir, return my sheep or pay me for it." So too, monks, some person has created a small amount of unwholesome kamma, yet it leads him to hell, while some other person here has created exactly the same small amount of kamma, yet it is to be experienced in this very life, without even a slight residue being seen, much less abundant residue. If, monks, one were to say thus, a person experiences kamma in precisely the same way that he created it, in such a case, there would be no living of the spiritual life and no opportunity would be seen for completely making an end of discontentedness. But if one were to say thus, when a person creates Kamma that is to be experienced in a particular way, he experiences its result in that way. In such a case, the living of the spiritual life is possible, and an opportunity is seen for completely making an end of discontentedness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So this story or simile on the lump of salt is a great one to understand, because you see different people in the world experiencing different things, and maybe they've actually done exactly the same thing, but they're experiencing it in different ways. That's what the Buddha is describing here, that the bowl of water represents very few wholesome things that an individual has done, versus the river of all that water represents a significant amount of wholesome things that someone has done. And when you have that lump of salt going into the small bowl of water, it's undrinkable. But yet that same exact size of lump of salt going into the river, the water is still drinkable. So it's the same thing, that depending on how much wholesome Kamma you've generated in your life, you're going to experience the same thing differently. Whereas if somebody steals a particular thing, if they've done extensive amount of wholesome Kamma and they've produced this extensive amount of wholesome Kamma, they're not going to experience that in the same way as somebody who's been doing all kinds of unwholesome things. And this helps you to be able to see that the exact result of Kamma is not possible to discern, that as the Buddha shares, it would lead to madness or frustration if you tried to do that. But instead, if you can see that there's a uniqueness to what someone experiences when they make a certain decision, and it's based on the decisions that we've made in terms of how much wholesome Kamma we have or how little wholesome Kamma that we have. This is the results of our decisions, that it's not going to be the same for everybody. So it's not like, if I do this, then I will experience this. That's not possible. That there's so many variables involved, you can't give a one for one like that. The Buddha can teach certain things like, these are the general things that lead to these kinds of things, but you can't say exactly with precision. And that's what the Buddha is helping you to be able to see here, because you might be curious of why you experience something in one way versus somebody else experiences it in another way. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So I'm just going to end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing, whether you're watching this live and attending the class, participating in the class, or whether you're listening to this on the replay. Thank you for your interest in learning and practicing these teachings, because as you're learning and growing and developing, it's going to help you, it's going to help those close to you, and it's going to help all of humanity to become a better and better place. As you guys would like help, you're always welcome to reach out by asking questions in classes, by posting in our Facebook group, by sending a private message, or scheduling personal guidance. Next week, we're going to be in the next set of chapters, so you can see the next 10 chapters in our book, and those are the ones that we're going to be covering. I think it's chapters 31 through 41, because I think that it actually goes up to 41 in this particular book. Because normally we would do 10 chapters up to 40, but I think if I remember correctly, it goes up to 41. So you can look at that, and that way you might decide to read before class and or after class, because you have the words of the Buddha and you have words from me to be able to help you integrate the teachings into your day-to-day life. Tomorrow in our group learning program, we're going to be in chapter 10, which is titled, What is Merit? This is a certain type of wholesome Kamma that an individual needs to generate in order to make their way towards enlightenment. So if you guys would like to learn that, I'll be teaching that on Sunday, 9 a.m. Thai time and 9 p.m. Thai time as well. And then it's also available through all of our recordings. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing meditation with students and opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. So thank you very much for being interested to learn these teachings, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.